Riding around on Torrent is generally pretty smooth. You can get on and off while moving. You can also get on and off quickly during combat. You can also pick up items while riding around. Now, you can only ride around in the overworld. Dungeon entrances and other areas show a blue line as you ride nearby. There's also no horseback in multiplayer. According to Bloodborne Game on Twitter, invasions might force you to dismount. I want to know how annoying that could be, as well as if you're more or less likely to be invaded while on horseback. Sprinting on horseback seems to be more of a speed boost rather than a press and hold. It's got pretty fast startup, you get moving super quick. Even though it doesn't have iframes, you could practically use it as a dodge. Torrent's double jump goes much higher and further than I thought. One thing I'd like to know is, does it have startup invulnerability? Could you use it to dodge attacks? One thing it doesn't do is it doesn't negate fall damage, so you can't use it to survive longer falls. If you use a spirit spring at least, you don't seem to have any fall damage. While riding in combat, you only have one active weapon, your right hand by default. You can attack to the left with L1 and L2, and you can attack to the right with R1 and R2. Because you don't have access to your left-hand weapon, you can't use your shield as normal to block. You can at least switch to your left-hand weapon via two-handing. The weapon skill that you use is always the one on your current weapon. I found melee combat on horseback a little tricky. It's harder to get into position and hit smaller targets. I think it might be best for bigger targets and bosses. The biggest issue that I found is that it's hard to judge distance on horseback. I think combat on horseback might be best for bigger weapons and ranged attacks. I've heard you can hold the attack button with at least some weapons to keep your weapon out. That would make it easier to hit smaller enemies. You see some enemies do that, such as the Nazgul-like Black Riders. I think horseback archery will probably be pretty good, especially as you can reliably keep your distance from most enemies. You can also use it for hunting, as you can chase fleeing wildlife. I've noticed you keep your movement for at least a little bit while casting spells. This is great for Carrion Piercer. The spell is surprisingly useful for jousting. You generally don't have to be riding towards the target to hit while casting ranged spells. This can be great for spells like Glintstone Pebble. I noticed that Torrent can take a lot of hits before he dissipates, and hits can knock you off of Torrent even if it doesn't kill him. One thing I'd like to know is, can his health be upgraded, or does it scale with the player? At the very least, if Torrent does die, he can be resummoned with a Crimson Flask. Even outside of normal damage, enemies also have attacks specifically for knocking you off your horse. You see this with the Shadow Attack from some of the giant trolls. Being hit off of Torrent puts you in a knockdown state. While it didn't happen to me in the network test, it seems that enemies can use this state to execute a critical attack. This down state applies to enemies as well. So far, this doesn't appear to apply to bosses, at least for the Tree Sentinel boss seen in the network test.